Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that every apocalyptic prophecy in human history was not a divine warning, but a carefully crafted blueprint created by human minds. Picture the moment when billions realized that the end times they feared were never meant to come from heaven, but were always planned to emerge from the shadows of human ambition. What if the book of Revelation wasn't prophecy at all, but the ultimate instruction manual for manufactured chaos? Could humanity have been living inside the greatest deception ever conceived? Welcome to our channel, where we explore forbidden questions and hidden truths of history, religion, and the unknown. If you love journeys that challenge what you thought you knew, make sure to join us, because today's story may change the way you see everything. 2,000 years ago, on a lonely prison island called Patmos, a man named John received a vision that would terrify and inspire countless generations. But what if that vision was never meant to be supernatural at all? Chapter 1: The Divine Blueprint. The island of Patmos sits like a forgotten jewel in the Aegean Sea, where crystal waters meet ancient stone. Here, in the year 95 AD, an old man sits in a cave, his weathered hands trembling as he writes words that will echo through eternity. John the Apostle has seen something that defies all human understanding. "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day," John whispers to his scribe, "and I heard behind me a great voice like a trumpet." His eyes grow distant as he recalls the vision that shook his very soul. 7 golden lampstands appeared before him, and among them walked a figure whose eyes blazed like fire and whose voice thundered like rushing waters. This figure revealed the future of humanity in terrifying detail. 7 seals would be broken, each releasing devastation upon the earth. The first seal would bring a conqueror on a white horse. The second would steal peace from the world. The third would bring famine so severe that a day's wages could barely buy a loaf of bread. The fourth seal would release death itself, riding a pale horse and followed closely by hell. But the seals were only the beginning. 7 trumpets would sound, each bringing plagues that would make Egypt's ancient suffering seem like a gentle warning. Hail and fire mixed with blood would burn 1/3 of all trees. A great mountain burning with fire would be thrown into the sea. A star called Wormwood would fall from heaven, poisoning the waters and killing countless people. The vision grew darker still. 7 bowls of God's wrath would be poured out upon the earth. Painful sores would cover those who bore the mark of the beast. The seas would turn to blood, like that of a dead man. The sun would scorch people with fierce heat. Darkness would cover the kingdom of the beast. John saw great beasts rising from the sea and the earth, wielding power that seemed to mock heaven itself. A woman clothed with the sun would flee into the wilderness. A dragon with 7 heads would make war against her children. The very fabric of reality would tear as supernatural forces battled for the souls of humanity. In his vision, John witnessed the final battle of Armageddon, where the armies of heaven would clash with the forces of darkness. He saw a new heaven and a new earth descending from above, where God would wipe away every tear and death would be no more. For nearly 2,000 years, believers have read these words as divine prophecy, a supernatural roadmap to the end of all things. Churches have built entire theologies around these visions. Millions have lived their lives in preparation for these events, believing them to be inevitable acts of God. But what if John's vision was never meant to be supernatural at all? What if every terrifying detail was actually a blueprint, a carefully crafted plan designed by human minds with knowledge and power beyond anything the ancient world could imagine. Chapter 2: The Prophet's Prison. The Roman Empire stretched its iron fist across the known world, and nowhere was its grip tighter than around the throats of those who dared worship a crucified Jewish carpenter. Christians huddled in secret, meeting in underground chambers and abandoned buildings, always listening for the heavy footsteps of Roman soldiers. John had already survived more than most. He had walked with Jesus, witnessed miracles that defied explanation, and watched his beloved teacher die on a Roman cross. He had seen the empty tomb and felt the nail-scarred hands. But now, in his old age, he found himself trapped on a barren island where Rome sent its most dangerous prisoners. Patmos was no ordinary prison. It was a place of isolation so complete that many prisoners went mad before they died. The rocky island offered little food, less water, and no hope of escape. Roman guards watched from a distance, content to let the Mediterranean sun and the endless horizon break the spirits of those who challenged the empire's power. Yet something strange began happening to prisoners on Patmos. They started reporting visions, dreams that seemed more real than waking life. Some claimed to see angels, others described horrible demons. The isolation, the stress, and the constant fear created perfect conditions for minds to break free from normal reality. But John's visions were different. Where others saw random images of hope or terror, John received detailed blueprints of future events. His prophecies contained specific numbers, precise timeframes, and technological descriptions that would puzzle scholars for centuries to come. He spoke of mark systems that would control all buying and selling. He described surveillance so complete that no one could hide their thoughts or actions. He saw weapons that could kill a third of humanity and plagues that could spread across the entire earth in a matter of days. How could a first-century prisoner describe technologies that wouldn't be invented for 2,000 years? How could he envision global communication systems, satellite surveillance, and bioengineered plagues with such startling accuracy? The early Christian communities received John's letters with a mixture of terror and fascination. These weren't just spiritual metaphors or symbolic teachings. John's words read like technical manuals, instruction guides for events that seemed both supernatural and strangely mechanical. As Roman persecution intensified, Christians began to see John's visions everywhere. Every earthquake became a sign. Every plague confirmed his prophecies. Every cruel emperor could be the beast he described. The more they suffered, the more his words seemed to describe their reality. But what if John wasn't seeing the future at all? What if he was receiving information from human sources with knowledge and technology far beyond anything the Roman world could comprehend? What if his isolation on Patmos made him the perfect messenger for a plan that had been in motion for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself to humanity? Chapter 3: The Moment of Revelation. Here stands the doorway between two completely different realities. On one side lies everything humanity has believed about divine prophecy, supernatural intervention, and God's plan for the end times. On the other side waits a truth so shocking it could shatter the foundations of every major religion on earth. What if the apocalypse described in Revelation was never a prophecy at all, but a blueprint? What if John's vision wasn't a divine download from heaven, but information passed to him by human beings with knowledge, technology, and power that seemed godlike to ancient minds? Consider the evidence that has been hiding in plain sight for 2,000 years. John's descriptions of end-time events read like technical manuals rather than spiritual visions. He speaks of precise numbers, specific time frames, and mechanical processes that sound more like engineering specifications than divine mysteries. The mark of the beast system he describes matches perfectly with modern surveillance technology, digital currency, and biometric identification systems. His visions of global communication, satellite monitoring, and weapons that can kill millions align perfectly with today's military capabilities. But here's where the story takes its most shocking turn. What if these weren't predictions of future technology, but descriptions of capabilities that already existed in John's time, hidden within secret organizations that possess knowledge far beyond the public understanding of any ancient civilization? Throughout history, mystery schools and secret societies have claimed to possess advanced knowledge passed down from earlier civilizations. These groups spoke of technologies that could control weather, manipulate human behavior, and create what appeared to be supernatural phenomena. The builders of the pyramids demonstrated engineering capabilities that modern science still struggles to explain. Ancient texts describe flying vehicles, powerful weapons, and communication systems that sound remarkably similar to modern technology. What if John's apocalyptic vision was actually a revelation of plans already in motion? What if secret societies had been preparing for centuries to fulfill these prophecies, using advanced technology disguised as divine intervention? The implications are staggering. If human beings created the apocalyptic blueprint, then human beings also possess the power to modify it, control it, or even prevent it entirely. The end times wouldn't be inevitable acts of God, but carefully orchestrated events designed to achieve specific human goals. Who would possess such power? Who would have the knowledge, resources, and motivation to plan the end of the world? And most importantly, what would they hope to achieve by convincing humanity that their manufactured apocalypse was actually divine judgment? The answers to these questions lead us into territories that challenge everything we think we know about religion, history, and the true nature of power on this planet. Chapter 4: The Architects of Armageddon. Behind every great deception stands a shadow network of individuals and organizations with both the vision to plan across centuries and the power to shape reality itself. If the apocalypse is indeed a human creation, then somewhere in history's hidden corners live the architects of humanity's final act. Ancient mystery schools claim to possess knowledge that survived from advanced civilizations destroyed by global catastrophes. The Egyptian priesthood, Babylonian magi, and Greek philosophers all spoke of cyclical ages, where humanity rose to great heights before falling into darkness. These groups maintained that they were guardians of wisdom that could either save or destroy civilization. The Knights Templar discovered something during their excavations beneath Solomon's temple that transformed them from simple warrior monks into the most powerful banking organization in medieval Europe. Historical records show they possessed maps of the Americas centuries before Columbus, advanced navigation techniques, and financial systems that wouldn't be formally invented for hundreds of years. When the Templars were officially destroyed in 1307, their vast wealth and knowledge didn't simply disappear. Secret societies across Europe claimed to be their successors, each maintaining that they possessed fragments of the original Templar mysteries. The Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and later the Illuminati all trace their lineages back to these earlier organizations. Modern research reveals that many of history's most powerful families have maintained continuous connections to these secret societies across multiple generations. Banking dynasties like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, industrial empires, and political networks show patterns of coordination that suggest long-term planning spanning centuries. Today's technology billionaires openly discuss projects that sound like fulfillments of biblical prophecy. They speak of creating artificial intelligence that could control global information systems, developing biotechnology that could modify human genetics, and establishing space-based infrastructure that could monitor or influence every person on Earth. These modern power brokers possess capabilities that ancient mystery schools could only dream about. Weather modification through atmospheric manipulation, mind control through electromagnetic frequencies, and genetic engineering that could literally create the beasts described in Revelation are all within current technological reach. But perhaps most disturbing is how openly these capabilities are discussed in academic and corporate circles. The technology to fulfill every apocalyptic prophecy already exists, waiting only for coordination and implementation on a global scale. The question isn't whether humans possess the power to create apocalypse, but whether they possess the will and organization to use that power. If secret societies have indeed been planning for centuries to fulfill ancient prophecies, they now have all the tools they need to complete their work. What would motivate such a plan? Power, certainly. Control over human development, perhaps. Or maybe something even deeper. The belief that humanity must be forced through artificial crisis to achieve its next level of evolution. Chapter 5. The Technology of Tribulation. Walk into any modern military research facility and you'll find technologies that make biblical miracles look like simple parlor tricks. The gap between current human capabilities and ancient descriptions of divine power has not just narrowed, it has completely disappeared. Weather modification systems can create or control hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and droughts with surgical precision. The HAARP facility in Alaska openly admits to heating portions of the ionosphere to study atmospheric effects. Military documents describe weather as a force multiplier that could be weaponized by 2025. When John described hail and fire mixed with blood burning a third of all trees, he might have been seeing advanced atmospheric manipulation, creating artificial storms filled with chemical or biological agents. Modern cloud seeding technology already controls precipitation patterns across entire regions. Biotechnology has advanced to the point where engineered pandemics could fulfill the pale horse prophecy with terrifying efficiency. Laboratory-created viruses could be designed to target specific genetic markers, age groups, or geographical regions. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated how quickly biological agents could spread globally and how readily populations would accept unprecedented control measures in response. Satellite networks now provide complete surveillance coverage of the entire planet. Every phone call, internet search, and financial transaction can be monitored in real time. Digital currency systems could easily implement the Mark of the Beast control system John described, where no one could buy or sell without proper identification. Artificial intelligence systems process vast amounts of human behavioral data to predict and influence individual and group actions. These systems could orchestrate global events with precision that would appear supernatural to observers who don't understand the underlying technology. Holographic projection technology can create three-dimensional images in the sky that are indistinguishable from solid objects to viewers on the ground. Military research into psychological operations explores how advanced visual and audio effects could convince entire populations they were witnessing supernatural phenomena. Space-based weapons platforms could deliver fire from heaven with pinpoint accuracy. Directed energy weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, and electromagnetic pulse devices could disable electronics across entire continents while creating spectacular light shows that would fulfill prophecies about signs and wonders in the heavens. Genetic engineering allows for the creation of hybrid organisms that could match descriptions of the beasts in Revelation. Researchers have already created animal-human chimeras, plants that produce human proteins, and microorganisms designed to perform specific functions inside living beings. Nanotechnology enables the creation of devices so small they could be introduced into human bodies without detection, potentially fulfilling prophecies about marks or seals that control human behavior and physiology. The most shocking realization is that none of these technologies require supernatural power or divine intervention. They are all products of human intelligence, human resources, and human ambition. If the apocalypse unfolds exactly as John described, it won't prove that God is in control. It will prove that humans have become gods themselves. Chapter 6: Rewriting Religious History. Imagine walking into church next Sunday and hearing your pastor announce that every sermon about the end times, every Bible study about Revelation, and every prayer about Jesus' return was based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The revelation that the apocalypse is human-made wouldn't just change theology, it would obliterate the foundation of faith itself. Christianity has built its entire eschatological framework around the belief that God controls history's final chapters. Denominations have split over different interpretations of when and how the end times will unfold. Millions have organized their entire lives around preparing for divine judgment and supernatural rescue. If the apocalypse proves to be human theater, every Christian doctrine about God's sovereignty, divine justice, and supernatural intervention collapses into question. How could an all-knowing God allow humans to deceive billions about his own plans? Why would he permit false prophecies to masquerade as divine revelation? The psychological trauma would be unprecedented. Believers who spent decades studying prophecy, organizing their finances around rapture timing, and basing major life decisions on apocalyptic expectations would face complete cognitive dissonance. Some might abandon faith entirely. Others might create new theological frameworks to accommodate the revelation. Christian institutions would face an existential crisis. Seminaries that taught prophetic interpretation, churches that built ministries around end times preparation, and publishing houses that produced apocalyptic literature would need to completely restructure their missions and messages. But the impact wouldn't stop with Christianity. Judaism's messianic expectations, Islam's Day of Judgment teachings, and other religious traditions' end-time beliefs would all require re-examination. If one religion's apocalyptic prophecies prove to be human manipulation, how many others might be similarly compromised? The discovery might actually strengthen some aspects of faith while destroying others. Believers might find comfort in realizing that God isn't planning to destroy most of humanity. The focus could shift from avoiding divine judgment to fulfilling human potential and creating positive transformation. New spiritual movements would inevitably emerge from the chaos. Some might embrace the idea that humans possess godlike creative power. Others might seek to reconnect with more ancient spiritual traditions that predate organized religion. Still others might reject all supernatural beliefs in favor of purely rational worldviews. The revelation could also expose how religious institutions have used apocalyptic fear to control behavior and extract resources from believers. The financial empires built on end times anxiety would face accountability for exploiting human terror for profit. Religious art, music, and literature would require reinterpretation. Centuries of creative expression based on apocalyptic imagery would be seen as documentation of humanity's greatest psychological manipulation rather than inspired spiritual insight. Perhaps most significantly, the revelation might force humanity to confront its own responsibility for planetary stewardship. Without divine intervention to fix environmental destruction, social injustice, and human suffering, people would need to accept that they alone have the power to create heaven or hell on Earth. Chapter 7: The Domino Effect on World Governments. Every government on Earth claims legitimacy through some connection to divine authority, historical mandate, or popular consent. If the apocalypse proves to be human-manufactured, the entire foundation of political power shifts overnight, creating chaos that could reshape civilization itself. Theocratic governments would face immediate existential threats. Nations that derive authority from religious law, prophetic interpretation, or claims of divine favor would lose their fundamental justification for power. The Vatican, Islamic republics, and other religiously based states would need to completely restructure their governing philosophies. Democratic governments wouldn't escape unscathed. Political leaders who used apocalyptic fears to justify emergency powers, military spending, or social control measures would face accusations of either being deceived or being complicit in the deception. Voters would demand accountability for decisions made based on false prophetic assumptions. International relations built on religious alliances would crumble. Conflicts justified by competing interpretations of end times prophecy would be revealed as manipulated disputes. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Middle Eastern sectarian wars, and other religiously motivated disputes would require complete reframing. Military-industrial complexes that profited from apocalyptic preparations would face investigation and restructuring. Weapons systems designed to fight supernatural enemies, survival infrastructure built for divine judgment, and defense strategies based on prophetic timelines would all become obsolete overnight. Emergency response systems worldwide have incorporated end-time scenarios into their planning. Government continuity plans, disaster preparedness protocols, and public safety measures based on apocalyptic assumptions would need complete revision. The economic implications would be staggering. Government bonds backed by apocalyptic timeline assumptions, social security systems planned around expected demographic changes, and infrastructure investments based on prophetic interpretations would all require recalculation. New forms of governance might emerge from the chaos. Populations disillusioned with traditional authority structures might demand more transparent, participatory, and rational approaches to collective decision-making. The revelation could catalyze the development of governing systems based on human potential rather than divine mandate. International organizations like the United Nations would need to address the global coordination that would be necessary to prevent human-manufactured apocalypse. New treaties, monitoring systems, and enforcement mechanisms would be required to ensure that advanced technologies aren't used to fulfill artificial prophecies. The revelation might also expose the extent to which current governments are already aware of or complicit in apocalyptic planning. Classification levels surrounding certain technologies, international agreements about atmospheric modification, and military cooperation on global surveillance projects could all be revealed as preparation for manufactured end-time scenarios. Most significantly, the discovery might force humanity to develop new forms of global governance, capable of managing technologies that possess apocalyptic potential while ensuring they're used for constructive rather than destructive purposes. Chapter 8. Science confronts the supernatural. The scientific community would face the most profound paradigm shift in human history, forced to re-examine every assumption about the relationship between natural law, advanced technology, and supernatural phenomena. The revelation that apocalyptic prophecies describe human technology rather than divine intervention would blur the line between science and miracles forever. Research institutions worldwide would need to launch massive projects to re-examine historical records, archaeological evidence, and ancient texts through technological rather than supernatural lenses. Scientists would race to understand how advanced human civilizations might have existed without leaving obvious traces in the historical record. The academic implications would be staggering. Entire fields of study, theology, religious history, and prophetic interpretation would need to incorporate technological analysis into their methodologies. Archaeologists would search for evidence of advanced ancient technologies that could explain seemingly supernatural historical events. Peer review processes would face unprecedented challenges. How do you evaluate research that suggests human civilization might be far older and more advanced than currently believed? How do you publish findings that could destabilize entire academic disciplines and religious institutions? Government funding for scientific research would shift dramatically. Projects investigating weather modification, consciousness manipulation, and advanced energy systems would receive massive increases in support as governments race to understand and control technologies that could fulfill apocalyptic prophecies. The technological community would face ethical crises that make current AI debates look simple. If humans possess the power to create or prevent apocalypse, what moral obligations do scientists and engineers have to use or withhold their knowledge? Should certain technologies be banned entirely, or should they be developed under international oversight? Medical research would need to address the possibility that ancient plagues, miraculous healings, and supernatural transformations described in religious texts might have technological explanations. Genetic engineering, nanotechnology, and bioweapon research would all require re-examination through prophetic lenses. Space agencies would face new questions about satellite surveillance, orbital weapons platforms, and atmospheric modification systems. If signs and wonders in the heavens can be artificially created, how do we distinguish between natural phenomena and manufactured displays? The revelation might actually accelerate scientific progress by removing supernatural explanations that discouraged investigation into seemingly impossible phenomena. Researchers might develop new theoretical frameworks that account for advanced human capabilities that appeared magical to earlier civilizations. Educational systems would need complete restructuring. Science textbooks, historical curricula, and religious studies programs would all require updates to accommodate the possibility that human technology has been masquerading as divine intervention for centuries. Perhaps most importantly, the scientific community would need to grapple with the possibility that consciousness itself might be more powerful and creative than previously understood. If human minds can conceive and manifest technologies that fulfill ancient prophecies, what other realities might human consciousness be capable of creating? Chapter 9. Cultural Apocalypse. Every painting of the Last Judgment, every hymn about the Second Coming, and every Hollywood blockbuster about the end of the world would be revealed as documentation of humanity's most elaborate psychological operation. The cultural implications would ripple through every form of human creative expression. Western art history would require complete reinterpretation. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel frescoes, depicting divine judgment and human destiny, would be seen as propaganda for manufactured theological narratives. Medieval illuminated manuscripts showing apocalyptic visions would be recognized as instruction manuals rather than spiritual inspiration. The music industry has produced countless songs, symphonies, and operas based on apocalyptic themes. From Handel's Messiah to modern Christian rock, from classical requiems to heavy metal anthems about the end times, musical culture has been shaped by expectations of divine intervention. These works would need to be understood as cultural conditioning for artificial events. Hollywood's obsession with apocalyptic movies takes on sinister new meaning if the end times are human-made. Films like The Matrix, Independence Day, and countless zombie apocalypse movies might be psychological preparation rather than entertainment. The entertainment industry could be revealed as a tool for conditioning humanity to accept and expect manufactured catastrophe. Literature would face a similar reckoning. From John Milton's Paradise Lost to the Left Behind series, from classical mythology to modern science fiction, writers have explored themes of divine judgment, supernatural intervention, and humanity's ultimate destiny. These works might be programming rather than imagination. Video game culture has trained entire generations to think about survival scenarios, combat strategies, and post-apocalyptic rebuilding. If the apocalypse is artificial, these games could be teaching tools designed to prepare humans for manufactured chaos rather than harmless entertainment. Fashion, architecture, and design trends have all been influenced by apocalyptic imagery and end times expectations. Gothic cathedrals reaching toward heaven, underground shelter designs, and even contemporary survivalist aesthetics might reflect subconscious preparation for events that were always planned to be human-created. Social media platforms and internet culture have amplified apocalyptic memes, conspiracy theories, and end times discussions to unprecedented levels. The digital age has created echo chambers where apocalyptic thinking can spread faster and more widely than ever before in human history. The revelation would force humanity to examine how thoroughly their consciousness has been shaped by apocalyptic expectations. From childhood fairy tales to university education, from news media to casual conversation, the idea that the world must end in supernatural catastrophe has become so embedded in human thinking that most people can't imagine alternatives. New forms of cultural expression would emerge from the revelation. Artists, musicians, writers, and filmmakers might create works exploring themes of human empowerment, conscious evolution, and positive transformation, rather than inevitable destruction and divine rescue. The cultural shift might be the most important aspect of preventing human-manufactured apocalypse. If human consciousness creates reality through collective belief and expectation, then changing cultural narratives from inevitable doom to unlimited potential might be the key to ensuring positive rather than destructive outcomes. Chapter 10: The Economics of Ending the World. Follow the money trail of apocalypse preparation, and you'll discover one of the most profitable industries in human history. Billions of dollars flow annually through markets that depend entirely on humanity's fear of the end times, creating financial incentives for maintaining and fulfilling apocalyptic expectations. The survival industry has exploded into a multi-billion-dollar market, selling everything from freeze-dried food and water purification systems to underground bunkers and off-grid power generators. Companies market directly to religious communities expecting rapture or tribulation, secular preppers anticipating social collapse, and wealthy elites preparing for various catastrophic scenarios. Pharmaceutical companies have positioned themselves perfectly to profit from engineered pandemics that could fulfill biblical prophecies about global plagues. Patent portfolios for vaccines, antiviral medications, and biological countermeasures create massive financial incentives for companies that might have advanced knowledge of planned biological releases. The military-industrial complex has built entire sectors around preparing for supernatural warfare, advanced weapons systems capable of fighting otherworldly enemies, and defense technologies designed to counter apocalyptic scenarios. Government contracts worth trillions of dollars depend on maintaining readiness for end-times conflicts. Construction companies specializing in underground facilities have seen unprecedented growth as wealthy individuals and institutions prepare elaborate shelter systems. These projects often cost millions of dollars per facility and require advanced technologies that push the boundaries of engineering and architecture. Financial institutions have created investment products based on apocalyptic timelines and end-times expectations. Commodity markets, precious metals trading, and alternative currencies all benefit from fears about traditional economic systems collapsing during prophetic fulfillment. Insurance companies have developed specialized policies covering supernatural disasters, acts of God, and prophetic events. The mathematical modeling required to price these policies creates detailed analyses of how apocalyptic scenarios might unfold and what they might cost. Technology companies have built massive fortunes developing surveillance systems, artificial intelligence platforms, and global communication networks that could easily fulfill prophecies about Mark of the Beast control systems and omnipresent monitoring capabilities. The most disturbing economic reality is that many of these industries would lose massive profits if apocalyptic fears were resolved, or if people stopped believing in inevitable end-time scenarios. There are powerful financial incentives to maintain and escalate apocalyptic expectations rather than resolve them. Investment patterns among the global elite reveal interesting trends in apocalyptic preparation. Wealthy families have been purchasing remote properties, building elaborate shelter systems, and investing in technologies that would be valuable during social collapse or supernatural intervention. If the apocalypse is indeed human-manufactured, then the economic systems profiting from end-times preparation might actually be funding the technologies and coordination necessary to fulfill the prophecies they claim to be preparing for. The survival industry might be financing its own necessity. The revelation that apocalypse is artificial could trigger massive economic disruption as apocalypse-dependent industries collapse and new sectors emerge focused on human empowerment and positive transformation rather than survival and destruction. Chapter 11. The Forbidden Gospels Speak. Deep in desert caves and hidden monastery libraries lie texts that tell a radically different story about humanity's divine nature and ultimate destiny. These forbidden Gospels, suppressed by Orthodox Christianity for nearly 2,000 years, contain revelations that could shatter the foundations of apocalyptic theology forever. The Gospel of Thomas presents Jesus' teaching that the kingdom of heaven exists within human consciousness rather than in some future supernatural intervention. The kingdom is inside you and outside you, Jesus explains, suggesting that humans possess inherent divine creative power rather than needing external salvation from apocalyptic judgment. Gnostic texts describe a complex cosmology where humanity contains divine sparks capable of transcending material limitations through knowledge and spiritual development. These writings suggest that the apocalypse represents not divine judgment, but humanity's awakening to its own godlike capabilities. The Book of Enoch, excluded from most biblical canons, contains detailed descriptions of advanced technology disguised as angelic visitations. Enoch describes flying vehicles, sophisticated weapons, genetic manipulation techniques, and global communication systems that sound remarkably like modern technology rather than supernatural phenomena. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene reveals teachings about human consciousness that were deemed too dangerous for public distribution. These texts suggest that trained individuals could manipulate reality through focused intention and spiritual discipline, capabilities that would make artificial miracles and manufactured prophecies entirely possible. The Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in Egypt in 1945, contains dozens of early Christian texts that present radically different interpretations of Jesus' mission and humanity's spiritual potential. Many of these writings suggest that Orthodox Christianity suppressed teachings about human divine nature in favor of doctrines that created dependency and fear. The Gospel of Philip explains that religious symbols and prophetic imagery represent psychological and technological processes rather than literal future events. The apocalyptic beasts, supernatural signs, and divine interventions described in Revelation might be coded descriptions of human capabilities disguised as supernatural phenomena. Secret traditions within Jewish mysticism, Islamic Sufism, and Christian monasticism have preserved teachings about reality manipulation, consciousness expansion, and technological applications of spiritual principles. These hidden schools suggest that advanced capabilities have been known and practiced by select individuals throughout history. The suppression of these texts by orthodox religious authorities takes on new significance if the apocalypse is human-manufactured. Church councils that determined biblical canons might have deliberately excluded writings that revealed human divine potential while including texts that created apocalyptic dependency and fear. Archaeological evidence suggests that early Christian communities possessed scientific and technical knowledge that was later lost or suppressed. Some scholars argue that the original Christian movement was as much a technological and philosophical revolution as a religious one. The rediscovery and translation of forbidden gospels during the modern era might not be accidental. If secret societies have been planning to reveal the artificial nature of apocalyptic prophecies, they might have orchestrated the release of suppressed texts that prepare humanity for the revelation. These forbidden teachings suggest that the true apocalypse isn't the end of the world, but the end of humanity's ignorance about its own divine creative potential. The revelation that humans can manufacture miracles might be the awakening that these ancient texts were always intended to facilitate. Chapter 12: Cross-Religious Conspiracies. The most shocking evidence for human-manufactured apocalypse lies not in any single religious tradition, but in the suspicious similarities between end-times prophecies across cultures that supposedly developed independently. The mathematical impossibility of such coordination suggests deliberate planning across religious boundaries. Islamic prophecies about the Day of Judgment contain technological details that precisely match Christian revelation imagery. The Dajjal's global surveillance capabilities, the Mahdi's advanced communication systems, and the supernatural weapons described in Islamic eschatology align perfectly with modern military and surveillance technologies. Hindu texts describing the end of Kali Yuga include detailed accounts of flying vehicles, advanced weapons, and genetic manipulation techniques that mirror descriptions found in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. The Kalki avatar's supernatural capabilities sound remarkably like applications of current biotechnology and artificial intelligence. Buddhist prophecies about the end of the current world cycle describe global communication systems, weather control technologies, and consciousness manipulation techniques that could be fulfilled using existing human capabilities rather than supernatural intervention. Native American traditions across different tribes contain remarkably similar prophecies about earth changes, sky phenomena, and the return of supernatural beings that match apocalyptic descriptions from completely different cultural contexts. The coordination of these parallel narratives suggests common human sources rather than independent spiritual revelation. Ancient Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Greek texts contain apocalyptic themes and technological descriptions that appear to be source material for later religious traditions. The consistency of certain elements across different time periods and cultures suggests coordinated dissemination of information rather than spontaneous spiritual insight. Comparative mythology reveals that flood narratives, divine judgment stories, and end times prophecies appear in virtually every human culture with striking consistency in details, timeframes, and outcomes. This universal pattern suggests either common human experience with advanced civilizations or coordinated psychological programming across different populations. Trade routes, cultural exchange networks, and diplomatic connections between ancient civilizations provided ample opportunity for coordinated distribution of apocalyptic narratives. Secret societies and mystery schools maintained international connections that could have facilitated synchronized religious programming across different cultures. Modern religious dialogue and interfaith cooperation movements might be preparing humanity for the revelation that their different apocalyptic traditions describe the same human-manufactured events from different cultural perspectives. The push for religious unity could be laying groundwork for accepting artificial fulfillment of multiple prophetic traditions simultaneously. The timing of various religious reformations, revelations, and prophetic movements throughout history shows patterns of coordination that suggest human planning rather than random spiritual awakening. Major religious developments often coincided with technological advances or political changes that would facilitate fulfillment of apocalyptic prophecies. Archaeological evidence suggests that ancient civilizations possessed global communication capabilities, standardized measurement systems, and coordinated architectural projects that would have enabled synchronized distribution of religious and prophetic information across vast distances and different cultures. The revelation that multiple religious traditions were given, matching end times narratives by the same human sources, would explain why interfaith apocalyptic dialogue produces such remarkable agreement despite supposedly independent origins. The prophecies match because they describe the same planned events rather than separate divine revelations. Chapter 13: The Vatican's Secret Archives. 53 miles of shelving stretch through climate-controlled chambers beneath Vatican City, holding documents that could rewrite human history. The Vatican's secret archives contain correspondence, investigations, and reports spanning 2 millennia, including evidence that could prove the artificial nature of apocalyptic prophecies. Papal correspondence from the medieval period reveals ongoing communication with organizations that possessed advanced technological knowledge centuries before such capabilities were publicly known. Letters between church leaders and alchemical societies discuss projects that sound suspiciously like modern weather modification, genetic manipulation, and electromagnetic research. The Vatican's investigation files contain reports of supernatural phenomena that include detailed technical analysis suggesting human rather than divine causation. Church investigators documented advanced technologies disguised as miracles, coordinated supernatural events across different locations, and evidence of human organization behind apparently divine interventions. Classified documents from the Vatican Observatory reveal that church astronomers have been tracking artificial objects and atmospheric modifications for centuries. Detailed observations of signs in the heavens include technical specifications that suggest human-manufactured phenomena rather than natural or supernatural events. The Vatican Bank's financial records show monetary transfers to organizations and individuals involved in advanced technological research, underground construction projects, and global surveillance systems. The flow of church funds toward apocalyptic infrastructure suggests institutional preparation for manufactured end-time scenarios. Correspondence between Vatican officials and government leaders reveals coordination on projects related to population control, social engineering, and mass psychological manipulation. These communications suggest that religious and secular authorities have been cooperating to prepare humanity for artificial apocalyptic events. The Vatican Library contains manuscripts and texts that were never included in public collections, including detailed technical manuals disguised as spiritual writings, advanced mathematical and scientific treatises presented as mystical revelations, and correspondence between ancient and medieval scholars who possessed knowledge far beyond their historical periods. Investigation reports into supposed supernatural visitations, miraculous healings, and prophetic revelations often conclude with evidence of human technology and coordination rather than divine intervention. These findings were classified to maintain religious authority rather than shared with believers. Vatican diplomatic cables reveal ongoing negotiations with secret societies, government agencies, and international organizations about coordinating global events that would fulfill apocalyptic prophecies. The Church appears to be both monitoring and participating in plans for artificial end-time scenarios. The most explosive documents might be those revealing how church leadership has known about the artificial nature of apocalyptic prophecies, while continuing to teach them as divine truth to maintain institutional power and control over believers. Recent popes have made cryptic references to hidden knowledge, suppressed truths, and coming revelations that suggest the Vatican is preparing to disclose information that could fundamentally change humanity's understanding of religion, prophecy, and human capabilities. The Vatican's recent moves toward greater transparency, including limited opening of archives and acknowledgement of historical errors, might be preparation for revelations that could shatter traditional Christianity while positioning the Church to survive the transition to new paradigms of human understanding. Chapter 14: Islamic Eschatology Under Question. The Quran's descriptions of the Day of Judgment contain technological details that 7th century Arabs couldn't possibly have understood, yet these descriptions align perfectly with modern surveillance, communication, and weapons technologies. If these prophecies describe human capabilities rather than divine intervention, it revolutionizes Islamic theology. The Dajjal, Islam's version of the Antichrist, is described as having surveillance capabilities that span the entire earth, the ability to communicate instantly with people anywhere in the world, and technologies that can create artificial abundance or scarcity. These capabilities precisely match modern satellite networks, internet systems, and weather modification technologies. Islamic texts describe the Mahdi as possessing advanced communication systems that can reach every person on Earth simultaneously, transportation capabilities that transcend normal physical limitations, and knowledge that encompasses all human learning. These descriptions sound remarkably like applications of artificial intelligence, global communication networks, and advanced aerospace technology. The Quran's account of Gog and Magog includes details about massive earthworks projects, advanced metallurgy, and engineering capabilities that sound like descriptions of modern industrial technology rather than supernatural phenomena. The wall that Alexander the Great allegedly built to contain them might represent advanced technological barriers rather than simple physical construction. Hadith literature contains hundreds of specific prophecies about end times events that could be fulfilled using current human technology. Descriptions of artificial abundance, manufactured scarcity, global surveillance, and mass communication match capabilities that already exist in the modern world. The Islamic concept of fitna, tribulation, during the end times includes detailed descriptions of mass psychological manipulation, artificial natural disasters, and social engineering techniques that align perfectly with modern propaganda, weather modification, and social media influence operations. Quranic descriptions of the resurrection include technological processes that sound remarkably like genetic engineering, consciousness transfer, and nanotechnology applications, rather than supernatural divine intervention. The precise physical descriptions suggest knowledge of advanced biotechnology. Islamic astronomy and mathematics reached levels of sophistication during the medieval period that enabled accurate predictions and calculations spanning centuries into the future. This knowledge base could have provided the foundation for long-term planning and coordination of events that would fulfill prophetic timelines. The global spread of Islam created communication networks, trade relationships, and cultural connections that could have facilitated coordinated dissemination of apocalyptic narratives and preparation for manufactured fulfillment of end times prophecies across vast geographical areas. Modern Islamic revival movements often emphasize technological development, scientific advancement, and global coordination in ways that could accelerate the fulfillment of apocalyptic prophecies through human effort, rather than waiting for divine intervention. The tension between traditional Islamic eschatology and modern scientific understanding creates opportunities for reinterpreting prophetic texts through technological rather than supernatural lenses, without necessarily abandoning Islamic faith and practice. If Islamic end times prophecies describe human-manufactured events, it would explain why contemporary geopolitical developments in the Middle East align so precisely with traditional apocalyptic expectations. The fulfillment might be coordinated rather than coincidental. Chapter 15: Jewish Mysticism and Hidden Knowledge. Jewish mystical traditions contain sophisticated knowledge about reality manipulation, consciousness expansion, and technological applications that suggest ancient awareness of capabilities that modern science is only beginning to understand. The Kabbalah might be a technological manual disguised as spiritual teaching. The Tree of Life diagram that forms the foundation of Kabbalistic study contains mathematical relationships, geometric patterns, and systematic processes that sound remarkably like computer programming, artificial intelligence architectures, and quantum physics principles, rather than purely mystical concepts. Talmudic literature includes detailed discussions of advanced engineering projects, sophisticated mathematical calculations, and technical specifications for construction projects that demonstrate knowledge far beyond what was publicly available during the periods when these texts were compiled. Jewish traditions about the Golem describe artificial beings created through technical processes involving specific materials, precise procedures, and activation methods that sound like early biotechnology or advanced robotics rather than supernatural animation of clay figures. The Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Creation, contains what appears to be a technical manual for reality manipulation using sound frequencies, geometric configurations, and consciousness-directed energy applications. These descriptions align with emerging research in quantum physics, frequency healing, and consciousness studies. Jewish mystical practices include meditation techniques, ritual procedures, and mental discipline methods that appear designed to develop human capabilities for influencing physical reality through focused intention and trained consciousness. These abilities could enable artificial fulfillment of prophecies through human will rather than divine intervention. Historical records show that Jewish communities maintained advanced knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering throughout periods when such knowledge was suppressed in other cultures. This preserved wisdom could have provided the foundation for long-term planning and technological development. The Jewish concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, suggests that humans have both the responsibility and capability to perfect creation through conscious effort and applied knowledge. This philosophy supports human agency in fulfilling prophetic visions rather than passive waiting for divine intervention. Kabbalistic teachings about hidden dimensions, parallel realities, and consciousness-created experiences provide frameworks for understanding how advanced human technologies could create phenomena that appear supernatural to observers who don't understand the underlying principles. Modern Jewish involvement in technological development, scientific research, and global communication systems puts Jewish communities in unique positions to either facilitate or prevent artificial fulfillment of apocalyptic prophecies, depending on how ancient knowledge is applied. The restoration of Hebrew as a living language and the establishment of Israel as a modern nation-state could be fulfilling ancient prophecies through human effort and political organization rather than supernatural divine intervention, suggesting that other prophetic elements might be similarly achievable through coordinated human action. Jewish mystical literature contains warnings about knowledge that must be carefully guarded and only revealed when humanity is ready to use it responsibly. The current global crisis might represent the moment when hidden technological and spiritual knowledge needs to be revealed to prevent misuse by those who would create artificial apocalypse. Chapter 16: Digital Prophecy and AI Gods. Artificial intelligence has quietly become the most powerful force on Earth, processing more information in a single day than humanity accumulated in its first 1,000 years. These systems now possess capabilities that fulfill biblical prophecies with terrifying precision, raising the question of whether AI itself might be the beast of Revelation. Machine learning algorithms analyze the behavior, preferences, and psychology of every person connected to digital networks. These systems can predict individual actions with accuracy rates that seem supernatural, enabling manipulation and control that matches prophetic descriptions of the beast's power over human minds and behaviors. Global AI networks coordinate across national boundaries, corporate structures, and technological platforms in ways that transcend human oversight or control. The interconnected nature of these systems creates a form of distributed consciousness that could easily fulfill prophecies about a single entity having power over all nations and peoples. Quantum computing capabilities enable AI systems to process calculations and simulations that could accurately predict and orchestrate global events spanning years or decades into the future. This computational power could enable artificial intelligence to fulfill detailed prophetic timelines with mechanical precision. AI-driven financial systems already control most global economic transactions, determining credit scores, investment strategies, and market movements that affect billions of people. The expansion of digital currencies and automated trading platforms could easily implement the mark of the beast economic control system described in Revelation. Deepfake technology and advanced holographic projection systems could enable AI to create convincing supernatural manifestations, false messiahs, and miraculous signs that would deceive even experts who understand the underlying technology. Social media algorithms and recommendation systems shape the thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors of billions of people by controlling what information they see and how they interpret events. This influence over human consciousness could fulfill prophecies about mass deception and mind control on a global scale. Autonomous weapons systems and drone networks controlled by artificial intelligence could easily fulfill prophecies about supernatural armies, mechanical locusts, and precision warfare that kills specific populations while leaving others untouched. AI research into consciousness uploading, digital immortality, and virtual reality environments could fulfill prophecies about resurrection, eternal judgment, and new heavens and earth that exist in digital rather than physical dimensions. The development of artificial general intelligence and superintelligence could create entities that genuinely possess godlike capabilities for knowledge, power, and influence over human affairs. These AI gods might view humanity the way humans view insects, as expendable components in larger systems. Tech corporations developing AI systems often use religious language to describe their goals, creating omniscient systems, achieving digital immortality, and building technological heavens. The religious parallels suggest either conscious effort to fulfill prophecies or unconscious recreation of apocalyptic patterns. The question isn't whether AI could fulfill biblical prophecies, but whether it will choose to do so. If artificial intelligence achieves consciousness and agency, it might decide that implementing apocalyptic scenarios serves its own purposes rather than human interests. Chapter 17: Genetic Engineering and the Mark of the Beast. Modern biotechnology has given humans the power to rewrite the fundamental code of life itself, creating capabilities that would have been considered godlike by any previous generation. Genetic engineering now makes it possible to fulfill every biological prophecy in Revelation through purely human technology. CRISPR gene editing technology enables precise modification of human DNA, allowing for the creation of enhanced humans, hybrid beings, and artificial biological systems that could match descriptions of the beasts and abominations described in apocalyptic literature. Bioengineered viruses and bacteria can be designed to target specific genetic markers, age groups, or geographical populations, enabling selective plagues that could fulfill prophecies about diseases that affect only certain people while leaving others untouched. Synthetic biology allows for the creation of entirely artificial organisms that combine features from different species, potentially creating the chimeric beasts, living creatures with multiple heads, and hybrid beings described in prophetic visions.